Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the OSU Mapcast. I'm Cinnabun, and in this episode, I'm joined by OSU alumni and longtime mapper Krisom. Please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Krisom. Username Krisom. I'm a mapper and player from Chile. Used to be a BAT, the bitmap approval team member, and I was very active from 2010 to 2012, and then for a little bit in 2014. So yeah, glad to be here. Thanks.
Heck yeah, man. And let's just get started right into it. And with the first question, how did you first get into OSU?
First got into OSU back in 2009, if I recall correctly. I had just an in real life friend who was like, hey, I found out this cool game about music and rhythm and it has some cool songs. He used to play a lot of Catch the Beat, and I downloaded it and started playing. I played a lot at first, but I got more into the standard one than Catch the Beat because I came from playing Elite Beat Agents on the Nintendo DS, so
Nice.
that felt a little bit more familiar, yeah.
You just like the standard a lot more than Catch?
Yeah, I mean, I liked Catch, but I like the aspect of rhythm a lot. I like rhythm games a lot. I used to play DDR a lot in the past. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah, and it was really fun. And I like Catch the Beat because of the movement aspect, but I was missing a little bit more of the rhythm. And I also, of course, liked Taiko because of the rhythm, but I missed a little bit of the movement. So, like the standard
Was
mode
like the
was
perfect
quite.
mix.
Yeah, for me it was like the perfect mix. And it's also, maybe it's because DDR also involves movement. It's not just pressing keys on a keyboard. I mean, if you're playing in your computer,
Right.
but if you're playing in a DDR set, you have to move your feet. So it's both movement and rhythm. So I quite like that mix.
That's cool. And so what are some things you do outside of OSU?
Outside of OSU, well, I studied agricultural engineering. I studied that while I was active in OSU back then. Right now, I work as an ESG analyst, so I basically do sustainability analysis of companies, like rate them in terms of human rights respects and environmental and things like that. And I've been a house dancer, which is a kind of street dance, like hip hop, break dance,
That's
popping,
impressive.
the guys that do the robot. House dance, it's with house music. I've been doing that for I would say 8 years. I've been pretty involved in that. And I do a lot of stuff. I am a yoga teacher. Um, I practice Reiki, I read the tarot, I do a lot of mystical, magical stuff, and I also
Interesting.
like playing video games.
Of course. That's all a lot of stuff. Impressive.
Yeah, I get I get that a lot. A lot of people are like, you do way too much.
You definitely
and
keep busy, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of agree, but variety is the spice of life, and I get to know a lot of people while doing a lot of things, so I have a lot of fun.
Hey, that's what you gotta be doing.
Yeah,
And so
true.
how did you get into mapping then from OSU?
I began mapping after like a year of playing. I was lurking for a whole year. I was looking at the maps that were being ranked between 2009 and 2010. I was looking at the forums, but never posted a lot. I was looking at the discussions from the different kinds of mappers. And at some point I was like, yeah, I want to try my hand at this. There are some songs that are not as represented enough as I think they should be. Even back then, you had a lot of anime openings and Vocaloid songs and everything. And by the way,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. But I did miss, like, I don't know, something more rock or something more in Spanish or other languages or other rhythms. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try my hand at mapping. And ironically, my first map I've ever uploaded was a Hatsune Miku song. Uh,
Nice.
so I wanted to try that because the rhythm was quite simple, and I knew that, okay, this is the first thing that I'm doing, and I know that it's going to be bad, but I'm going to polish it as much as I can. I'm going to follow an easy rhythm, an easy melody, something that it's easy to read for other people.
Of course.
And apparently people liked it back then. They were like, okay, this is not a, they weren't like, this is a good map, because it was my first map, but they were like, you have a lot of potential. So a lot of people were like, yeah, I think you can do good. And I also had that reaction from other mappers when I uploaded my second map, which is Panic at the Disco song.
Nice.
And I continued because I got positive feedback from them. They were very nice, all of those people. So yeah, that's kind of what got me into it, and then I just continued making more songs as I felt like this might be interesting to other people, or this is something that I want to see in the game, like being ranked, of course.
Right. And like, here you are.
Yeah, I mean, after a big break, but
Right,
here I
makes
am.
sense. And what were kind of like the struggles of a beginner mapper back then, and like when you first started?
Oof. Okay. Well, first of all, the editor, it's quite different from what it was back then. Back then, the editor was quite bare bones. Like, we didn't have many functionalities. Most mappers right now are used to, like, you place in a slider, for example, you place the 2 points, like the two
Yeah.
points of the slider, and you make a third point, and then you have a perfect arc. Like, it's symmetrical and it looks lovely and everything. Back then it was hell. If you wanted to make a symmetrical arc, you had to put it in the x-axis, make sure that all of the points were aligned, place an anchor point at some point. You had to place a red point at the end of the slider to make sure that the end point didn't move. You had to flip it horizontally a lot of times in order to make the arc balanced. And then, I don't know, we didn't have a lot of functions. We didn't have I think the rotate function was introduced later. I think what was it? Well, we didn't have a full set of hit sounds. We didn't have the drum hit sounds back then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we didn't. We didn't have color hexing for new combos. So whatever you wanted to do with your new combos, you couldn't make like, oh yeah, I'm going to make all of the jumps be, I don't know, white color, and I'm never going to use that color ever again in the map. No, like it was like, people look at the editor right now, and to be fair, when I came back, there were a couple of functions that I didn't knew about, or that maybe I forgot about, but it has stayed kind of the same. There are a lot of improvements, but there are also a lot of things that I understand people might be angry that are missing for so long. I know that there is a hit sound copying a tool.
Yeah.
The mapping tools, I think. Yeah, I got recently introduced to that, and I was like, man, this makes everything so much easier.
That's
back
crazy.
Then, yeah, back in my days, and I'm going to sound so old.
Oh, so boomer.
Yeah, but like back then we had to hit sound every single one of our circles and sliders individually, and if we wanted to switch from the soft hit sound to the normal hit sound, you had to create another time time thingy, I forgot the name, and change manually from the timing window the hit sound from soft to normal and then back. So you can imagine it was hell if you wanted to do anything with those sounds. So maybe if you go back to older maps, you will notice that they might not have the nicest hit sounds, and that's most likely why, because it took a while to do good hit sounds. And something else that has changed a lot right now, and that I'm very glad for it, by the way, is that back then the game was still quite new. There weren't enough mappers, and all of us were learning. I mean, you listen
Right.
to names like, I don't know, Larto or Citrot or Andrea, and it's like they've mapped a lot, and they've mapped even before I joined. and you think, oh, they've been good all the time, and no, they weren't. Like, and no disrespect to them, by the way, but we were all learning like
Of
what
course.
patterns work, what rhythms work. Back then, placing jumps everywhere was like, but why would you place this jump? Because it goes with the rhythm, it highlights the beat. Yeah, but it's not intuitive enough. And it was a very structured approach to maps and mapping in general. So even if you wanted to highlight something in your bitmap with the rhythm, you had to be very careful because you could get backlash from the players, backlash from other mappers, or from the people who give mods, and it's kind of weird all the changes. I remember back then when I made the crisscross, which some people call the Krisom cross, because
Heck
it's,
yeah.
yeah, for those people who don't know, it's basically two balanced S sliders that are overlapping each other and that go into opposite directions. And to me, they look very pretty, and I started using them a lot. But even back then, people were like, "But this is a slider overlapping another slider, and it looks ugly." And I'm like, "Come on, man! It's for how it plays, and it looks pretty to me." And there are other things that people didn't do back then, like variable streams, like a stream that you start and it's very close to each other, each node, and then it starts getting wider and wider. That people back then were like, no, we cannot do this, and other people were like, but let's try, let's push the game forward. So it was a
Dang.
mixture of, yeah, it was a mixture of the editor being quite bare bones, nobody knowing exactly how to map. We were all discovering ourselves. We were all discovering styles. We didn't know what styles of mapping were.
Right.
And we were also trying to make things approachable for newer players. Uh, but we also had to keep pushing the patterns and the movement and everything forward. So I think that's how I remember the mapping community back then, and the kind of struggles that I faced. And yeah, as a new mapper, like, I was lucky that some people noticed that apparently I was doing good, and they liked my maps a lot back then. So that was nice. But I know for a fact that a lot of mappers back then, very very talented and good mappers, didn't get enough recognition, didn't get enough attention because there were not enough nominators, BITs,
Right.
and it's quite hard. Like it's quite hard to get attention from someone like that if you don't map a certain song or in a certain way. Like, I don't know, if you don't map Ini's style or completely symmetry, or if you don't map, I don't know, a Hatsune Miku song or a Vocaloid song, it's quite harder to get attention. So I was lucky because I got attention back then, but there are a lot of people who didn't.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of
that,
like that
yeah,
right now still.
yeah, I've noticed. I've seen some people, like, I'm still not fully integrated back into into the whole
Right.
community, but I've been seeing some people still like there are not enough nominators, and like they nominate always the same people. And guys, it was the same back then.
Right.
Sorry to burst your bubble, but it's and oh, and that no, that can be considered a joke back when we bubbled maps. But sorry
Oh.
to burst your bubble, but that's also how it was back then, and I fear that it's always going to be that way. But like, you have to work your way around it, I guess.
Right. So I guess compared to that, like you being part of like super early into OSU and all that, how do you view like modern maps now and like how the scene has completely changed since you last been a part of it?
Well, I'll be honest. I haven't completely done my homework on this. Like, I have seen some new maps. There are some people from the Spanish mapping community that have told me ever since I came back, like, hey, you might want to see this or you might want to see that. And I've seen a few maps, but I haven't been like, I haven't looked at all of the, I don't know what's the name of this popular mapper, Sotarks,
So
I
Tarks, yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen all of his maps. I haven't seen most of the newer stuff from Andrea. which I'm surprised by the way that he's still mapping, and I'm
Oh,
very glad that
definitely.
he's still active. Yeah, he's an awesome dude, by the way. Um, so while I have seen some new stuff, I haven't seen that many. And while I am kind of surprised but by what I've seen, like these crazy speed ups and crazy slowdowns and these jumps that to me, and again to me, don't make a lot of sense. I can also, I think I saw this coming. I knew when I launched the game again that
This
I
would be
was
like
going to
all new.
see, yeah, all new and very crazy and completely different, because this is something that even back then you had to understand. uh, Osu and mapping in particular, it's both a video game for the people who play the game, and it's also a form of and this is going to sound super petulant, but it's also a form of expression for the person who maps. It's like you're interpreting a song with the editor, with circles and sliders and the movement. So you're making a rhythmical representation and a visual representation of a song. So whenever you have those two things, a player base and like an artistic form of expression, both things always evolve slowly, but they do. Players become more skilled,
Right.
and the people who make the art become more experimental. And it happens in every single kind of art. Like, for example, you see back then, I'm going to reference a lot of dancing, by the way. You see ballet, and ballet has always been around, and they created a lot of things. And then when it became kind of repetitive and kind of boring, people started experimenting with different stuff with dance, and they created contemporary dance. And ballet didn't go away. A lot of people from ballet were like, this is not dancing, and it's not properly interpreting the music, and why are you using these songs? And like, people moved from it, but ballet stayed there. And
Of
then
course.
yeah, and then you have a lot of it happens with everything. I see it happen all the time with house dance, for example. There are in house dance, there are like, I don't know, 26, 27 basic steps, something like that. They all have names, how they should be done and everything. And you have to respect the people who made these steps and these rhythms and these songs and everything. But as musicians move forwards with house music, you also have to adapt to how they make the music, and some new steps are going to happen, and you're going to start dancing in another beat, and you're going to start incorporating movements from, I don't know, from shuffle dance, from hip hop, from popping, from other styles of dance that are not from house. But you take the basics from house dance and you incorporate it into what is going on right now. And it's a social dance, so it moves forward as a society, you know. So
Right.
it's the same with the game. There are players as well, and these players are going to be increasing in their skills, so we should be giving them something so that they have fun. But we also should keep the newer players in mind. Like, if
Of course,
everything
yeah.
that became ranked was like an extra difficulty map, I don't think we would get like a good renovation of the player base.
That makes sense. And yeah, that all like very interesting. And you mentioned like yeah, dancing and all that. So like does your dancing influence the way you create your maps in like any ways, or how does that go?
Yeah, I think there's a stark contrast. When I came back, I downloaded a lot of my old maps to remember, like, okay, what did I do? Because I had like a faint idea on some of the things that I mapped, and some others I'm like, no, I don't remember this at all. And I started dancing in 2011, like end of 2011, and I started mapping before that. So before that, I was very structured in my approach to creating maps. So I used a lot of symmetry. I was kind of inspired by Innis mapping, but not 100%. Like, there were a lot of stuff that the people who were more into Innis mapping were like, you're doing this wrong. Like, okay, whatever. And something else that I had in my older maps is that I used very simple rhythms, and my patterns were quite clustered. Like, they felt quite like claustrophobic. Like you didn't move the mouse that much. And I was very focused on the pattern, the pattern, the pattern. It has to be symmetrical. It has to be, you have to be able to recognize it. Like
Right.
I was very focused on that. Once I started dancing, I started recognizing, hey, this is not just a rhythm game. It's also a movement game. It also has aiming elements. Like I'm going to try slowly, slowly of course. I'm going to try incorporating this. So I always after that, like after my I don't know in which map I started to feel like apply this very much. But after that, I started thinking, how would I dance to this song? Like, how would I dance to an anime opening? How would I dance to a Hatsune Miku song? How would I dance to a song by Shakira? How would I dance to a traditional rock song? And I was thinking, these kind of movements and these kind of styles and patterns, and it all has to come together to represent something.
Of
Like if I'm
course.
mapping a hip hop song, I'm not going to just use the patterns that I did before. I'm going to try to reference hip hop in a way. So how do I do that with the movement? You know? And at some point, I also started trying to incorporate more like break a little bit more from the symmetry. Like right now, I can do a lot of symmetry. Like a lot of people most likely recognize me for that. But right now, I try to be more like symmetry inspired. Like I try to take something that's symmetrical, that's an interesting pattern, that it's interesting visually, and I
Okay.
try to break it down, like rotate it, like maybe make the pattern at one side but not at the other, because this is kind of similar to what happened when I started freestyling in dance. Is that when you start freestyling, you start doing the same step like 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and then you move into the next 8 and you do another movement, and then you move into the next one and you change the step and you change it every 8. That's when you're starting, and that's kind of similar to how I did my maps back then. Like it was very structured and you could see where the map was going. uh, as I started becoming a better dancer and better at freestyling in dance, I tried to become better at breaking down the patterns and the rhythms, and instead of using like just the same step like 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7 and 8,
Right.
and like incorporating different jumps and different things, like I think that helped me a lot in understanding better, like, okay, how would I dance to this song? How would I interpret this song? And also, it has helped me understand which kind of songs I would not be able to map because I would not be able to dance to them. Like, I have my style in everything. Like everyone has its own style in
Yeah.
everything, and you also have to know your limits. You know, there are some things like I wouldn't be able, for example, to dance to like this high beat like breakdance. I love to see it. I really love to see it, but I would not be able to dance it. So something similar happens with mapping. Like there are some songs that I'm like, this song is so cool, I love it, I would love to be able to map it, but it wouldn't fit my style
Yeah, you
because
just
maybe the
can't.
song is, yeah, because maybe I don't know, the song is too chaotic, and like I try to be more chaotic, but it feels forced. So I'm like, okay, no, I have to leave this to someone else, you know?
Right. Yeah. That's good that you know like where like your limit is, and we're like I'm just gonna let someone else do it.
Yeah, I think, and that's something that I quite like about us. Is that, well, I know that a lot of people in the mapping community, they did it back then, and I've heard that they kind of still do right now, but I don't know, of course, firsthand because I haven't been around for that long. But I know that some people see it like as a competition, like my mapping style is better than yours, and I
Right.
have to be the most popular person, and then I have to have this whole following behind me. And I'm like, that's cool, I guess. It's cool that you have ambition,
Yeah.
but for me, it's a collaboration. Like, we're making something for other people to enjoy, we are enjoying it ourselves, and we all are targeting different members of the player base. You know, I am not good I am not good at playing, by the way. I have a shitty computer. It lags all the time, like my mouse teleports, like it's awful. But even back then, I wasn't that good at playing the game. But still, I was kind of good, so I mapped up to my level and maybe a little more. And if I tried to make everyone follow my mapping style, I know that the game would stagnate. Because you have the issue that there are people who are becoming better, so what do you do with those? And you have the opposite problem of people that are pushing boundaries, making new things, breaking patterns. Let's go against all patterns and make our maps readable only for the top 1,000 players. And that's so cool. Like, I appreciate what you're doing so much you don't understand. But you don't have to forget to also map things that are easier for like people who are just starting or the people that are in between. Like they have a good grasp on the game and they want to break out of the patterns and move into harder rhythms.
Of course.
But I'm not going to force you to map that. Like I can do that, or maybe other mappers can do that. So to me, it has always been a collaboration. Like I'm going to map my style and I'm going to try to evolve as much as possible and to stay fresh. And you do your stuff and I'm going to maybe take a look at your stuff and learn from it, you know?
Right. I like the very down to earth mentality to keep. And it's, yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's like everything in life. Everything you do, like there are places where you have to think about things like a competition, but there are also places where you have to think about things like a collaboration. If someone, again, in a dance scenario, if I'm battling someone in a freestyle battle, and they win against me because the jury thought that he danced better, I'm not going to be angry at him like, oh, but it's just because the jury likes you and everything. No.
Right.
I'm glad that you did great, and I'm going to take a look at what I did because there's always someone recording. I'm going to take a look at what I did. I'm going to take a look at what you did. I'm going to take the things from what I did and improve upon them. And I'm going to look at what you did and how can I improve based on what you are doing. I think that's the right approach to, well, everything in life.
Right, just analyzing and to get yourself better, which as a whole makes everything else better.
Yeah, and it makes life more enjoyable, I guess.
Right.
Like if you reach a plateau at a certain point, it kind of becomes boring to map the same way on the same style every single time. I don't know. Personal thoughts.
Yeah, and you said like your style. You mentioned it. Like since your mapping style like still kind of like pretty old school compared to like today's maps, and with you being back into mapping at all, are you trying to like learn to incorporate this newer style of mapping into your maps, or are you sticking more kind of like with what you already know?
Well, again, I haven't completely done my homework. I have heard the names of some new techniques, and again, I'm not a very good player, and I know that a lot of these new techniques are very advanced. So I don't want to jump out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
But I don't want to stay in it either. I want to take little steps, and if anyone is listening and they see a new technique and they see my maps and they're like, oh my god, you would be great in applying this to your maps or this other technique, I'm all ears. I love hearing suggestions and feedbacks on how I can improve. So I'm always open to new things, and I'm going to incorporate them as I feel comfortable and as it reaches my target audience, like maps for people who are almost reaching insane and extra, but maybe not that much, and that take you from easy to extra. Like I like mapping whole spreads. So if I'm open to it. I'm not close to it. I'm not going to be like, oh no, these youngsters are doing everything wrong.
They're ruining our game.
Yeah. Back in my day, we had to walk 5 kilometers under the snow in order to make a balanced arc slider, and we liked it.
Right. No, of course. And yeah. And also for those like who don't know you or like only like really know your name, you recently came back from like a 6-year break. So what was like the reason for you took the break in the first place?
It's been a long time, so I kind of have to recall a little bit. I know that I took a break from 2012 to 2014, and I know that 2013 was the year where I was studying yoga, and I was also at university, and I
Oh,
was
okay.
also dancing. So there were a lot of things going on right there, and I kind of were like, yeah, I have to leave this like a little on the side. By the way, I continued mapping always offline during at least during 2013, but I didn't connect that much because the social aspect. While I love it, like I made a lot of good friends, both internationally and within Latin America and within Chile. I also was like, maybe it's not the right time. I'm doing a lot of stuff, so maybe it's not the right time. Then I came back a little bit in 2014. At that point, I had already graduated as a yoga teacher. I was still dancing, however, but I was in my last year of university, I think, and I was doing my internship. So I came for a little while. I talked with some people. I remember seeing some of my inspirations back then still mapping, and I uploaded some things, I ranked some things, and then I went back into a break on a long hiatus because I had to graduate. I had to
Yeah.
move on from. I also think I have had some personal issues back then. I don't quite remember. And then I didn't come back mainly because, uh, on one hand, I think my computer was pretty much a potato back then, so it couldn't run. Like it
Uh,
was worse than what I was running, like what I'm using right now. But yeah, I think that's like the reason for my break, and then I just kept doing other stuff. Like I continued dancing, and I got back into video games. And I started working. I'm an old man compared to most of the player base right now. Like
right.
for those who don't know, I'm 29.
That's not
So
old. Come on.
I mean, most people that I talk to in the Spanish Discord mapping server thingy, I tell them, yeah, I'm 29. They're like, oh, grandpa, please have your chair and please sit down. But yeah, um, I kind of like did so many other things that I didn't really have a lot of time for it, and I started enjoying a lot of other things. So my mind, while I would remember um, a lot of the friends that I made during that time, and I still talk to most of them, or well, some of them. I talk to, for example, Dereku a lot. Dereku,
Okay.
for those old guys, old school,
I'm sorry, I
they
can't
know
say.
him, but Dereku was he used to be like the head of the global moderation team, and he
Okay.
was awesome, and he was a very good person. And I also talk with other people, like with some people from the Latin American Spanish mapping community and everything. But I don't know, I just didn't feel like coming back. So yeah.
And so then, what brought you back to Osu now? Or why are you back?
Well, the world is ending, so I thought I might. um,
I caused
I
the
mean,
end of the world.
yeah, I caused the end of the world, so I also wanted to see us burn. Now, let's see. There are a couple of things that brought me back. First of all, um, well, of course, the whole COVID stuff and everything, and I wasn't doing very well mentally, like beginning of May. In fact, I had to take some days off from work because I was quite stressed with COVID and isolation. I lived by myself in a very small apartment, so it
Okay.
was kind of becoming a little bit overwhelming because workload was going up and my motivation was going down with COVID. And also in Chile, for those who don't know, late last year we had a very strong social protest. So I was stressed for a long time. And at some point, I had to take this break from work. One of my friends, like, he's not in the game, of course, but he knew that I played the game. And he's a very close friend, he knows me a lot, and he was like, hey, I think you should play Osu again. And
That's sweet.
yeah, that was very sweet. But like, I listened to that and it kind of made sense, but I was like, yeah, but nah, I'm not sure. And then later, I think it was in the same week. It's like the stars, the planets aligned. I think that same week, Mao contacted me. And by the way, I'm going to pronounce every single username with a Spanish accent. So if
Oh
I
no, it's fine. Go for
butcher
it.
yeah. I think Mao contacted me through Facebook because we have each other as friends. and he was like, "Hey, I'm doing a mentorship program." Well, of course, he asked how I'm doing. He wasn't he wasn't that rude. No,
Right.
but he contacted me and he was like, "I'm doing this mentorship program. I'm teaching experienced and semi-experienced mappers like different styles and things. And for their next assignment, I'll have them copy your style. So I was wondering if you could come back into the game, like just download it and maybe get Discord and maybe give them your feedback." Like in real life. And I was like, the planets are aligning. I have a lot of time. I might as well try to install Asu again in my very quote unquote new computer, because this computer is newer than the one that I used back in 2012 for mapping, but this is still a 2013 computer,
Oh
so it's
wow.
old. I was afraid that it wouldn't run Asu. But yeah, anyway, I log back in, I do the exercise, and as I'm in, I'm like, I might as well try mapping something. And while I was mapping something, someone from the Spanish and Latino, of course, mapping community was like, "Hey, I'm glad to see you back. What are you doing?" And like I told him a little bit, and he was like, "Hey, you should join our Discord." And I joined them, and they've been like super sweet, and I've seen some of the stuff that they have been doing, and I've also kind of received some messages from like a lot of people, like random people that are like, "Hey, I loved your maps back then," or "I always use your maps for inspiration," and that's like, oh, that's so sweet. Like,
Aw.
yeah, like, and it was like, yeah, I'm going to try doing this again, like a little bit, and I started having fun again. I have a lot of ideas that I didn't finish back then. I have a lot of songs that over the years I've listened to them, even as I'm dancing to some house songs. I'm like, I should totally do this for Osu at some point.
Right.
So I guess right now is the point, and I guess that's what has kept me in, and like the community, like the nice part of the community, and the people who are sweet, and just having fun.
Well, we're glad to have you back.
Thank you. I mean, I don't want to tell people like, "Hey, I'm back," because you know, situations I might have to leave the game at any point again. But what I am going to try to do, and this is something that actually someone from the Latinos community
Yeah.
told me, is like, even if you take a break, like please don't disconnect like completely, because we miss you and you're very sweet. And I was like, "Oh, you're so lovely. I want to cuddle you, but social distancing and all that."
Right. Right.
So if at any point, like, situations happen and I have to leave again, I'm going to try to stay kind of connected.
That's cool. I mean, hey, now you have Discord. You didn't have it before, so.
Yeah, I mean, I had it, but I didn't use it because I'm a boomer.
Ah, okay.
And maybe this is also a good place to mention, if at any point you see me online and you see me mapping and you want to say hi, but maybe you're hesitating because you might find it weird or something, like just come and say hi. I love making friends, I love making connections, and yeah.
Of course. Heck yeah. And
Yeah,
so
heck
like
yeah.
yeah, so when you returned and all that, were there any like aspects of mapping and were like kind of like Osu as a whole that were like new or like you didn't expect to see change or like wow when you came back? Or like
Um,
what was like the biggest thing that shocked you when you came back?
the biggest shock, I think there's I'm not completely aware on how it works, but I think a lot of people are using like a PP system for mapping. Like there is like an artificial way to make your maps harder, and apparently they make the ranking better. Maybe you can correct me on this. And that was weird because back then, while we mapped a lot for, well, not myself, I was like kind of like an intermediate advanced mapper, but there were people that were mapping for the more extreme and expert players.
Okay.
But even then, they still had some semblance on, I'm going to use this because it's harder, not because it awards more ranking points. So again, and I might be speaking out of my ass here, and I'm sorry for anyone who uses this, like I'm not targeting you at all, but I don't know, that kind of shocked me a little bit. I might have been fed the wrong information also. So,
So they're
and
like
something
PP
else,
maps.
yeah,
Okay.
and something else that shocked me was the concept of farming, like,
Oh, Yeah.
yeah, I don't understand it because I understand what's farming in other games, like in RPGs or like MMORPGs or even in shooters, but in a rhythm game, I was like, how do you farm? And someone told me it's like in any other game, but in any other game it works differently. So I couldn't quite grasp my head
Well, and
around it.
also is
Something.
people farm like they play the PP maps, which give them like higher PP for like not super hard things, and just to get rank.
Yeah, I think that's what they told me, but I still kind of like I don't understand. Maybe it's an issue with the balancing system with which things in a map award PP or not. I don't know. And something else that was quite interesting is that uh, the way of modding, like before we had to do it all in the forums. Right
Right.
now it's yeah, right now
It
you
has
have
its
like a
yeah.
discussion page and it's so different. Modding actually it's also way different right now. I have looked at some maps and I don't see as many mentions of I don't know, of a style or rhythm suggestions, or I don't see that many suggestions. I think modding has become a lot about how something plays or if it's rankable or not, but I don't see. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong maps, but I don't see so much suggestions on style or things like that. Back then, oh, also by the way, back then, if we gave a mod that had like 1,000, or well, maybe not 1,000, but 100 suggestions, you only got one kudosu,
Oh really?
and yeah, you only got one for the whole post. Right now, you get one kudosu for every single mod that it's applied, and also interesting and shocking is that kudosu apparently don't do anything.
Did they not do anything back
back
then, or did they?
But back then, you could spend your kudosu to give your map like a higher priority. So whenever you modded something, you got awarded a point, a single point for the whole mod, by the way. So
Okay.
you could give a shitty mod, and if you applied just one thing, you get one kudosu. If you were like a bat or a mat or anything, and you did like the longest mod ever, and they applied it, you also just got one kudosu. But anyway, once you had one, you could spend it on your own maps in the forum in order to make your map more visible to other modders and to, well, potentially to bats. Like we had like this list of the highest, the maps with the highest kudosu, and you could also spend kudosu, if I recall correctly, in other people's maps, like if you wanted to hype them. So it was kind of useful, but right now I don't think that there is any use to it other than to determine who is being active in modding.
That
So
makes
that was
yeah.
also quite shocking.
I'm not sure if people still use it for like to show their maps more. I'm not aware of that.
They don't do that?
I'm not sure if they do that, if they still do that or not.
I think I have some from back then, but like I haven't seen anywhere where to use it, any place where to use it. So um, it's kind of useless now, I guess. And that kind of, I don't know, I feel like that works kind of against the modding community because it kind of decentivizes modding.
That
So
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, because back then you had an incentive to go through someone else's map and give them suggestions and examples and maybe direct them to places where they could improve so that you could get something in reward and then use it to like a currency to make your maps more visible. But right now, since there's not any incentive, you don't have like other than becoming a bitmap nominator, I think they're called
Yeah.
right now. Um, Other than for becoming that, which is by the way, if you're thinking of that, don't. They're going to hate me. Like the nominator team, it's going to no, don't tell them that. But yeah, it's kind of a tricky doing that. But other than for doing that, I can't think of any incentive for modding.
Well, it's just
So
more
yeah,
to at this point to just kind of help newer people or just people in general.
yeah, I guess so. I guess it could give you more visibility.
It's like, hey, I had a part in helping that get ranked or whatever. Yeah, but speaking of modding, you were also like so back then. You're also part like like you said BAT and MAT. So what was like your experience with those groups, like joining, modding, and then doing all that?
For joining, I remember back then there was. I'm not sure how it functions now, so consider that as I'm speaking. Back then, there was like this group of very strict modders that saw how other people were mapping and also how they were providing mods, because there's a very stark contrast between mapping and making a mod. Okay, and based on how you modded back then, they asked you, hey, do you want to become a member of the BAT team? I mean, BAT, because T is for team, sorry.
The BAT team.
Um, and I, I don't think anyone ever said no. Because it was like, hey, yeah, I'm going to be a cool kid. And back then, also, the BATs had like global moderation powers. So you would also participate in many different things related to the community, like moderating the channels, moderating the forums, which were way more active back then,
Right.
ranking maps, and all that stuff. And you were kind of seen like as a reference for modding, and if you were also a mapper for mapping. And it was quite interesting because there were some members, by the way, who were only modders and that never, I don't think, for example, I think Agnes, uh, I'm going to use the pronoun she, but I think, I don't know, I'm going to use they.
All right.
Agnes, they didn't have any ranked map back then, and some people gave them shit for that. But like, if you saw their mods, they were awesome, and there were a lot of very good modders that. Maybe it's a good point to get into the difference between modding and mapping. When you mod, you have to take into consideration what the style of the person is. So, for example,
Of course.
as I said, I'm a very symmetrical and pattern-based mapping, like pattern-inspired mapper. So when I go into someone popular from back then, I don't know, for example, with a very different style from my own, for example, I don't know, DJ Pop or Natsu Marine, who mapped in a
Okay.
very different way from mine, I cannot go into their map and tell them, hey, this is shit. Like, that would be
Right.
rude.
Right.
That would be
Of
very
course.
rude. And I know that the word.
Toxic.
Yeah, toxic. Like, we don't need that. Come on. Um, so I would have to go into their mindset and see everything that was placed and give them suggestions based on what they were trying to highlight. Because if I map the same song, it would be different. Maybe I wouldn't have placed this jump here, but I see this jump here, so I have to think, why did they place this jump here? And I have to listen to the song again and again and again, and oh, this is the rhythm. Okay, I understand why you did this. Maybe move it like a little bit closer. Okay, so that's a very stark difference between modding and mapping. When you map, you only concentrate in your style and you incorporate things as you go on. When you mod, you have to get into someone else's mindset and into someone else's style, and also what they try to accomplish with the song. Sometimes you might be like a very extreme mapper, and you might go into a song that is very slow, and like, you cannot tell them, oh, you make it harder. No, they don't want to make it harder.
Right.
And back then they used to give some people, like, I know that I mentioned Agnes and also Garvin and Dereku. They also gave mods every now and then, and they gave very good suggestions. But some people were like, but why are you modding my map? You're not a mapper, or your maps are shit. And it's like, it's not the same.
No,
It's
of
not the
course.
same. And the other thing that was like a very interesting experience back then, and I think it still is today, is that I like making friends and being contacted by people and talking. But back then, a lot of people started contacting me, like, hey, how are you doing? And I never knew if I replied, they would be like, can you mod my map? Or they would actually start a conversation. So, um, I guess that's kind of
Like
that.
just talking to get a nomination or mod.
Yeah, and some people were like, I'm going just, if you check my map, I'm going to get ranked, I'm going to get bubbled. And a lot of times that's not how I like to do things. I like to give suggestions based on style, based on the rhythm, based on if I see that you're mapping with patterns. Um, in patterns, if I see that you're mapping something more extreme or with more jumps, maybe give suggestions based on flow and things like that. But there are, and maybe I'm going to get into more of the opinion part. Everything I say, by the way, is my opinion. I'm not claiming I have
No
the.
worries.
Yeah, but there are some people who are like, he's claiming that this is this way and it's not this way. No, I know I might be wrong, but like, this is the thing. When you mod something as a nominator from someone who is very experienced and you want to give them suggestions, they're going to tell you, hey, this is my style. I'm not going to change this unless it's unrankable. And even if you claim that it is unrankable, they're going to get their friends to tell you, no, this is plays just nice. You're just making things up.
Right.
And it's like whatever. And if you concede and you rank that, then you're going to get players that are going to tell you, why did this get ranked? It's so bad, or this mapper is so brain dead, and this nominator is probably just doing this because this mapper is their friend, and like
Circle jerk.
so yeah, and like, no, I didn't. Like, what would I get from that? Like, I know that there's in any system there's people who abuse the system, and I know that there are people back then there were, and I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone from today because I don't know anyone, but I know that there must be someone who gets into the bitmap nomination team just to rank their maps, their friends map, and like, that's part of how it works. So like,
Right.
and if you want to, now let's go into the opposite end. Let's say that you go into someone who's trying to rank their first map. If you want to give them advice and suggestions on how to improve, you're going to take a while, like a long while, because besides from having to mod every single thing that is unrankable, you have to give them mods and advice on how to become better, and they expect you to point every single place where to improve, and that takes a long time. And
Definitely.
oftentimes, since they're just trying to get their first map ranked, oh my god, I have to do it because I want to be popular, and they don't care that much about your suggestions. They're like, yeah, I changed this now. Bubble my map, and I'm like, yeah, you changed the shape of this slider, but you forgot all of the copies, and they're like, oh, but why do I have to do this? So it's kind of stressful, you know. You want to give advice on people on how to become better and how to improve, and I had a lot of people back then that came to me and genuinely asked, hey, I'm mapping this, can you give me advice? And I was like, of course, I would love to. How to make your sliders better, how to improve your flow, how to maybe highlight a rhythm a little bit differently. I love to give suggestions to people, and if you ever come to me like after this podcast airs and are like, hey, I'm a beginner mapper and I want to learn some stuff, I would be overjoyed to do so. And I can already see a lot of getting a lot of inbox messages. But like, I don't mind. But having to moderate things because you're expected to, and only because people expect you to rank things, it's not fun, you know. It's
Yeah, that
kind of
makes sense.
it's very stressful. I had fun with organizing things for the Spanish mapping community. Like, I had a lot of fun with organizing mapping contests, or organizing, hey guys, let's map anime openings but in Spanish. I had a lot of fun doing that stuff, like semi-mentoring people and then seeing them evolve and getting inspiration back from them. But
Right.
being people don't realize that being a nominator, it's hard work and you don't get anything in return. So if you go through the whole list of the nominators and you don't find anyone who is accepting requests, you never know if it's because they're all going through something. I mean, with COVID and everything, everyone's going through something right now.
Right.
But they also have the requests from their friends and from new mappers and from the mapper that they like and from whatever. Like, you can ask for a mod, but if someone doesn't reply or if someone tells you no, just be like, hey, thanks, just let me know if I can contact you again, and then just leave. And if you want to improve things, again, this is a collaboration, not a competition. If you want to improve things, maybe start moderating, learn about different styles, learn about different patterns, become a better player as well, and apply for being part of the nomination team.
Of
I
course.
think that's a very good idea in order to, if you want to make the world better, not just the game, if you want to make the world better, you cannot just look outside and complain. You have to do things. And if you do them with kindness, things are going to start becoming better around you slowly.
Nah, definitely. And like, so with that being said, would you ever join like the BNG or something again, or like you done with that whole aspect of mapping?
I don't think I would because of what I said. I think
Yeah,
it would be
figured.
I think it would be very stressful for me. Besides, there's all of this new tech that for me, for 2012 me, would be unrankable, but it's most likely completely rankable right now. And
Right.
I wouldn't be, like, I wouldn't be a good addition, I don't think. And also, again, I'm open to receiving requests from someone, hey, can you give me feedback on how to improve? And I would be overjoyed to. But if you want me to become part of the nomination team, for me to nominate maps, that's very different, and I don't think I would be down for that. And also, um, like I still do all of the things that I said that I did. Like, I still dance, I still do yoga, I have a work right now, I have a job right now, and like I have a lot of, like, it's going to sound like, oh my god, I'm so popular, but I have a lot of friends and I have family, like, uh, and I'm
That's
29.
just
Like,
too much work
yeah,
to also
I'm not
add on
like,
like being, yeah.
yeah, I'm not 18 anymore. I don't have that much time. I have to do other things. So, and I don't want to disappoint anyone, and I don't want anyone to expect anything from me. Like, why didn't you nominate at least 4 maps this month? And I'm like, I couldn't. So I wouldn't take that position because I know that I would let someone down. So no, I don't think so.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Mm,
And so coming here now to the golden question that we ask every guest.
mhm.
What advice do you have for newer mappers from someone who has so many years of experience into mapping?
Oof. Well, I have a lot of advice, and I will give advice not only to new mappers, but also for those who consider themselves to be experienced. So, uh, sit tight because I'm going to take a while. And again, I'm going to highlight this again. Everything I say is my opinion. I don't want anyone to take this like gospel and Krisom said that this is correct and everything else is wrong. No, like, don't do that. First of all, for new mappers, map a lot. You might think that people who get their maps ranked only map one thing and they get them ranked, and then they go into the next thing and they get them ranked. For myself and for a lot of people, like experienced mappers that I know, a lot of my inspirations that I've talked to in the past, I know that they start mapping, I don't know, 5 songs a week or maybe even more, but they just finish one every 2 weeks, and maybe
Right.
even then they don't upload it because, and that's at least partially what I do, because they don't feel it's as good as it could be. So I'm going to leave it for later once I acquire my experience, and I'm going to start again. So it's not as easy as we make it seem, because most of us, we upload and get ranked. You don't upload everything you do, so you might take a while in getting your first map or your second map ranked because you have to experiment a lot, okay? And Lord knows that the first map I got ranked was not the first map I started
Right.
with. I started with a lot of different things that have never seen the light of day, and they might never. Also because I switched computers, so they are lost to the abyss. But that's one advice. The second advice is that right now you have the tools to get better because there are years of mapping ranked at the moment. There
Definitely.
are tons of forums and videos and guides on how to map, how to find your style, how to do. You have the information. If you want to become a good mapper, go to the information. Don't just wait for other people to do the work for you. Go to what I used to do, I went into the maps, because back then we didn't have these forums on mapping techniques, and we didn't have tutorials on videos, and the editor was out and everything. So what I had to do to learn mapping was that I downloaded the songs from the mappers that I liked, my inspirations and everything, and I saw them in the editor, and I saw what they did, and I played the editor like at 75% speed, and I tried to see, okay, what are they doing? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? Okay, so right now you have all that work done for you. So go and ask for help, okay, and go and search for the information yourself. Also something for new mappers is that maybe it's easier if you start with easier rhythms and easier music, something with a very recognizable melody, something with like a stable BPM, of course. It's easy to start with BPMs from 120 to, I don't know, 150. I think that's quite easy. It's easy mapping. Start with things that are simple and go from there. And something else, and this is also advice for the newer mappers, and this is maybe going to be a little bit controversial. There is no wrong way of mapping. There is no wrong mapping style. As long as at least one person enjoys what you did, even if it is yourself, then it's valid, okay? So don't think that, I don't know, for example, only focusing in flow and breaking patterns is bad and only symmetry is good. No, I take inspiration from a lot of different things. I just have my own style, but I take inspiration from a lot of different mappers. So you will start with a very structured approach or unstructured approach, but as you move forward, you have to make sure that you're not staying in the same place and that you're taking the best things from everything around you. And I think this applies a lot to both new mappers and also to old mappers, because once you start getting more and more maps out there, even if you experiment a lot and you don't upload everything you do, even then you might hit a plateau, okay? You might be like, I don't know what to do now, I have broken all of my patterns, or I cannot think of any single more slider shape. And see what other people are doing and try to think what you would do with this. Like if you made a collaboration with someone who you've never worked with, or you have very clashing styles, how would you adapt? And also get inspiration from real life and from other places that are not Oslo. I found it through dance. You might find it through art. You might find it through game design. I recommend, by the way, for new mappers, go and see videos on basic level design, especially in Mario games. You see in Mario games, yeah, because there's something interesting in Mario games that all the levels have a gimmick, okay? At least the 2D games and the most recent ones. All the levels have a gimmick. They introduce the gimmick in a very safe way. Like, I don't know, they introduce rotating platforms, for example. And the first time you see a rotating platform, there's nothing below if you miss the jump, so that if you miss the jump, you can try again. And then you see the concept evolving slowly and slowly, and then it becomes more dangerous, and then you get rewarded for doing the difficult jumps, and then at the end of the level, there's like this very big combination of I don't know, rotating platforms and moving enemies and bullet bills, for example. And then at the end, you have like this breakdown, like the intensity goes down again a little bit right before the end, so that you can give the player like a reward for performing good. There's something interesting that you can apply also when designing your maps. If you have a concept in mind And this is easier to do with longer songs, because if you're mapping a song that it's just 1 minute, sometimes it's harder to introduce a concept. But let's say that you're introducing the concept of I don't know, horizontal screen jumps. Maybe you will start with a smaller jumps, and then you will move into longer and longer, and then you will modify it with two sliders, and then at the end it's going to be two horizontal jumps, and you will introduce a variation, which is, I don't know, a vertical jump, and then at the end you just make a very small jump. It's a very crude example, but it's the only thing that I could come up with right now. There's also difficulty curves. Maybe it's easier to start slower
Right.
and make the song and make the rhythms more intense as time goes on. This is especially important if you're mapping easy and normal difficulties. Start with rhythms that are easier to recognize, and at the end, once the person has listened to the song a lot of times, introduce to them harder rhythms. And maybe you can even introduce the rhythms slowly. You can start, I don't know, for example, if you're following a rhythm that goes beat, downbeat, beat, you can start with a repeat slider, and then a slider, and at the end a circle, and then you can move into the three circles. Okay, and then maybe you can do three circles with a jump or a stack. Like, it's start slowly. And I think game design videos and game design advice will help you create these difficulty curves. And I yeah, yeah, it's good. And it's also, this is, of course, I always try to make my maps at least as accessible as possible. This will also help a lot of the newer people and the people that are trying to improve to get used to more complex rhythms, more complex patterns, and then breaking those patterns apart and everything. So I don't know, think of what you want to express while mapping, but also think of who is going to play it.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way.
And if you have an inkling sensation of the style that you want to map, it's good that you know the mappers that have those styles. Okay, so if you want to go for Anis mapping, you would look into, I don't know, I think Sushi and who was it? MM 2000, I mean MM 201, and like these old mappers. And if you're looking for more grid based mappers, like you would go into that and go into the editor and maybe ask for advice if they're willing to give you some. And for experienced mappers, something else that I wanted to mention, and that I talked a little bit about this when I talked about moderation, is that don't be afraid of getting advice. Even if you have 100 maps ranked, even if you have 200 or whatever maps ranked, never feel ashamed, and never be scared about getting advice from the players, from other mappers. Like, always take a look around you at what's happening around you. It's very easy
Of course.
to focus completely on exactly what you are doing and nothing else, and maybe just evolve based on that. Look around you. And also, something that has helped me a lot in particular, and that helped me a lot back then, look at the people that you have inspired. Because I know for a fact that I inspired a lot of people with my style uh, in mapping. And I look at their maps, I look at what they do, and I'm like, this is such a great way to incorporate what I would do, but I would have never thought of doing this. This is so good.
Right.
So
Just getting more ideas and all
yeah,
that.
getting more ideas. It's like you're getting more ideas from your future self or something.
Yeah, 'cause
So
how else are you gonna grow?
yeah, so don't be afraid to ask for advice. Don't be afraid to look at the person who's doing things completely different from you. If someone who hates patterns and hates symmetry and hates like balanced S sliders and hates Krisom crisscrosses comes to me and asks me for advice, I'm going to be overjoyed to tell them, um, you can incorporate it this in this and that way. And I'm I don't know a lot of the new mappers right now, but I always try to make sure to ask people for feedback. And whenever I get some mods that give feedback on style or on rhythm or anything, I always make sure to like thank them a lot, because even if you have 1,000 maps ranked, you can always improve, and you have to thank the people that are helping you improve. So
No, of course,
yeah,
definitely.
so experienced mappers back over there, like out there, uh, get advice even today, because I know that you can do better, and thank you for pushing the game forwards. Like from my heart, thank you for pushing the game forwards.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, that's all like very good advice. And yeah, the level editing, I didn't think about it that way. That's
Yeah,
very big brain.
yeah, big brain moves over here.
Yeah. All right, so we're coming to a close here because we've been a pretty long episode now. So are there any last things you want to say or mention, or like people to shout out?
There are so many things that I feel like I would have loved to mention. Like, yeah, there are two things that I'm going to try to make quite quick.
All right.
First, the people that have inspired me are a lot. I mentioned Larto, but of course, other people like Andrea, Not Shinta, Van Monkey, Lantu, YK Carrot, Sushi, Narok, Sada Forever, Armin, Sapphire Ghost, Siriru, which I think it's called Cyril Scarlet right now, No Hitter, Blissful Yoshi, like all of those people, and even the people who were popular back then, and that their styles are very different from me, from, I don't know, like DJ Pop, Natsu Marine, Colin Ho, Mafia Master. I take a lot of inspiration from them. There are a lot of good maps also from people that I thought that I teach to, like Blue Dragon, Oran, Kido-kun, Rukario, Mao. He was called Desperate-kun back then, but it's now called Mixio. And there are also people who are good moderators that are not maybe good, like, I think that they're good mappers, but you wouldn't recognize them as such. Like, I don't know, Garvin. He has, by the way, he has a very good The State of Modding, like little piece in his user page. So if you go to Garvin's user page, maybe read that.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the last people that I want to shout out are, of course, my friends from the Latin American, Spanish, and etc. mapping community. I took a lot of inspiration and I received a lot of help back then from people like Beuchi and Gens and Lisette and Lisbeth and Astom and Sakurahana. And also I became very close friends with Lovin, and of course my close friends Alumni Krisom, Gonslo, Erufen Rito, which is now called Ludwig for some reason, Mancuso underscore JM underscore, and Kenneth. Like, they're very nice people. And having said that, the best advice that I can give you, if you're going to take anything from what I've said, is please be kind. Act from kindness. I know that
Of course.
it's very easy to get heated. It's very easy to think that someone else is doing something wrong. But even so, act from kindness. Don't take anything personal. And it's very important to make this place a better place and everything around you a better place. You don't know if the person who was rude to you, if he's being abused by his family, if he has or they have suicidal thoughts. I know that it's getting quite dark, but sometimes even a hello, how are you doing, can make the difference for someone who might otherwise be violent in the general chat. I always have this approach with everything: build bridges, don't build walls. You never know who is going to be your friend the next time. And at some point, and this is going to hit some people hard, at some point you're going to stop playing the game because of whatever reason, because you
Right.
got bored of it, or Pepe got sick and the game is never going to be updated anymore, or whatever. You're going to stop. And what's going to stay with you, it's not your score, it's not your leaderboard, it's not the maps that you've ranked, it's the connections that you've made, the friends that you've made. Even after this break, I have kept talking with some friends, like with Dereku. I talk with him a lot, and I talk with Gonslo a lot as well. and I made some friends that I still have in Facebook. And when I came back, I was able to reconnect with these people. If I had made walls and not bridges, I wouldn't have that, and maybe I wouldn't have come back. And
Right.
opening yourself to other people and other experiences is always very enriching to yourself as a person. So please be kind and build bridges, because it will be better for you.
That's very sweet, of course.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that's the greatest advice you can give anyone, and yeah, that has been Krisom.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Also, go see my maps and rank them.
right. No, go check out
Any
Krisom.
any bats and any BNs over there. I'm going to try to map some things, but like, see them if you like them, and if you don't like them, give me feedback. And thank you for having me. It was very interesting having this conversation.
Oh
Sorry
no,
for going, yeah, sorry for going for so long.
it was long, but I enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And yeah, so this has been episode 16. I want to say big thanks to Krisom for joining me, and thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this episode, please do leave a like and consider subscribing. And as always, all feedback is appreciated, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye bye.